So welcome everyone. I'm Nick Kime. I'm the owner of the Flight Providers Skydiving Center, just north of Springfield, Missouri. And joining me today, we have Michael Wadkins, who is the Regional Director of the North Central Region, the Safety and Training Chairman at USPA, and also the Traveling Examiner with Xcelskydiving. So thank you for joining, Michael. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to this conversation.
Yeah, and I just kind of want to preface this. We're kind of starting. I wanted to do this to provide some updates for our instructors at Flight Providers, kind of around the Rating Renewal Seminar, to get a little update on kind of what's happening in the market a little bit, safety and training wise, anything we've learned from last year related to incidents, and really just anything that I can share with our instructors. And I hope to share this with anyone else that's interested also.
Okay, great.
So I'm going to prepared a few questions that I think we can go through. First one is, I know the USPA has a lot going on. I think some of those things are not always visible to the our jumpers. And so what would you say would be the top priorities that USPA is focused on?
Oh, well, that really depends on the committee. Each committee is driven to represent our membership, anything from finance, governance, competition. Obviously, the big plate or the big to-dos are usually on safety and training. We have a new focus on the Canopy First program and the students' progression and out of the ISP. If you notice on the A card, we always focused on the skydive itself, right? And then followed after that is spotting, a quick blurb on the canopy portion. What we've done is we revised that A card now. And it's kind of more of a canopy first program where we're focusing on the canopy skills opposed to the skydiving, because that's what we've done in the past, Nick, as you probably already know, as a seasoned instructor.
Yeah.
Well, along with that, we're going to be doing revamping the sim. That's been an ongoing process. But what happens every time we get new training ideas or new canopy first ideas, like Sherry Butcher and her team came forward, it keeps on adding more and more to the IRM. And the sim. So we're looking at a new launch, hopefully somewhere a soft launch in January. The A card is more focused on skill-driven exercises, and it's a lot easier for you to follow it, that particular A card. We're also getting rid of the progression card. Remember, you had the A license proficiency card and the progression card, the 2-pager. We're looking at phasing that out in 2 years. Also, we're looking at doing what we're doing right now with you and me is instructor seminars online. So instead of having a formal educational time frame set for safety day or whatever it is, any instructor can go online and view something very similar to what you and I are presenting right here, which will also account for their instructor rating seminar.
That's pretty exciting. I know. So at our drop zone, with us focusing really more doing the IAD program, that the Canopy First really makes a lot of sense. So that's kind of exciting.
We're also looking at doing some other things online for some of the instructor courses. We all know that the coach course is a very beefy time frame, meaning beefy as in a lot of stuff being put out in 3 days. We're looking at, we actually have completed it. It is online right now, where you can take all the educational modules first. That's 6 to 12 modules, so that you're more educated when you show up to that coach course instead of feeling so overwhelmed. You've experienced some of those coach courses. Some of those candidates get a little overwhelmed all that information. So it's kind of a study head or prep packet. So when you show up, you can actually focus on the skill sets, the dive flow, the 20-minute call, your presentation. So we're also looking at that for all instructor ratings, not just for coach, but we're going to have the same type of modules for AFF, IAD, static line, and tandem.
And is that a online USPA material, or is that Xcelskydiving material?
That's USPA. You can go online right now and actually purchase it for $99.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to do the same thing for all the instructor ratings. The price point might vary depending on the membership, on what they're willing to spend. The challenge there is you're going to spend money up front with USPA for $99, then go to an instructor examiner to teach that. So we're still playing around with it. We think it's valuable information. Anybody can take it in anytime. So that's kind of, we're trying to go along the lines of what modern day education is now with skydiving, is get that educational material out first, read it, study it, and understand it. So when you show up to the course, you'll have questions and be a little bit more focused on the task at hand.
What about instructors that already have their rating? Will those materials be made available to them, or do they pay for that also?
They right now it's still like in a beta testing program. How's that going to be received by the membership? But it should be available for everybody.
Okay. All right. Next question. So, what FAA regulatory pressures could affect skydiving in the future? I know. Maybe I think I've got a separate. I guess we can. Part of that question, maybe the second part of that question is the call to action from the USPA, and some of the proposed changes are coming about. So I guess maybe what do you see as proposed versus what do you see as kind of the most likely that we should maybe be preparing for now, and what action should we be taking now?
You're talking about the Air Tours and Sport Safety Parachute Safety Act. That's in Congress right now. We actually had a senator was trying to propose to get it out of the bill, but it didn't happen. If they implement this bill, it's going to affect skydiving across the board. May not be immediately, but will affect the bottom line for all drop zone owners, because you will have to follow Part 135 when it comes to the maintenance schedule. You as a pilot, you know what I'm speaking to. Right now, we operate under 91, where there's less stringent maintenance issues. We leave them up to the aircraft owner, the mechanic on site, those kind of things. Part 135 will require all the recommended maintenance, all the proposed maintenance, which will increase costs for the drop zone owner. Obviously, the costs across the board for skydivers will be incurred, lift tickets, etc. And it may hurt the small business owner, the small DZO. They may have to shut the doors if this bill gets passed. So that's why you see a lot of us, jump to action kind of thing. Notify your congressman. Obviously, we're in alliance with AOPA and some of the other aviation industries to fight this bill. That's what the USPA does best. Is they lobby for our rights as skydivers and defend our rights to skydive at airports. But sometimes there's a knee-jerk reaction. If you know what started this came out of Hawaii. I don't think it's necessarily because of that incident. I just think that sometimes people don't know that we can really safely regulate our sport. We don't need any FAA intrusion, if you know what I mean. I think we've been doing a really good job at that. That's what the USPA is for. However, I'm concerned. I hope this doesn't pass. I hope the skydivers understand if that does happen, we have no other option but to increase the costs,
Yeah. What about any other maybe proposed expansions to Part 105 or anything outside of that proposed legislation that's kind of maybe in the background to kind of be aware of? Or
well, we have a very good director up there named Michael Knight. Obviously, he's in the thick of it, trying to work on other proposals. Him and Albert, they do a really good job with the lobbying, not only with our government, but with other aviation entities. So we're really fighting it. I don't know if there'd be a proposal to alleviate some of those restrictions on us. I'm not sure. We're just hoping that it doesn't pan out.
Okay. So I think that kind of covers a little bit about those proposed changes. I saw I didn't realize it was Part 135 adherence. And then I saw the additional initial training for pilots and the additional reoccurring training also.
I like that. Education's a good thing. It really is. And we already have an educational program, which that USPA has. So I'm always up for education. I wouldn't be opposed to that, but the opposition lays on the maintenance.
Well, and I saw the part that I was reading about is that training and initial training may even be redundant for what's in place today already. Sure. Yeah. So,
well, that's where Mr. Michael Knight and Albert would get in and maybe revamp some of that training program to appease some of the things that the FAA may want.
And actually, I've seen a lot of insurance companies that have favored that. So we've come up with our jump pilot training program that we put all of our pilots through, and that's helped us from an insurance standpoint get our pilots insured. So I feel like the market itself is maybe already imposing some of that additional training requirement.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
What about any specific lessons learned for instructors related to incidents last year?
Well, as you know, the big one was the tandem canopy fatalities. We'd gone quite a while without having them. Then it seems that we had just a couple multitudes in a row. Not to speak to the reason why those happened, we also think it's might be more of an educational thing. So actually, we have an initiative started by some examiners in the field. One particular name's Angie Argon, who's looking into tandem canopy program during the tandem instructor course and certification course. A lot like some of the canopy skills that a B licensed skydiver has to do, or even an A licensed skydiver has to do. We're looking at and putting that or implementing that into some of the tandem certification courses. Right now, it's a beta testing program. We have a bunch of dive flows that she's worked with our examiner working group, and we're going to start implementing them this year and with select examiners on some of that canopy work. Hopefully, we'll find that's beneficial, but sometimes, Nick, you just can't keep people from making bad decisions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of comes down to knowing the information is different than following. Yeah, or choosing to follow that.
Yes, sir.
Anything from on the static line IED side or coach side that kind of came
absolutely out? IED static line will be. There's so much new stuff going on. I was remiss to add that we're going to have IED and static line videos now. You know how you'd always AFF when you went to go check out the dive flows. Now we're going to have IED and static line and tandem. We're going to have some of those videos that are going to be available for the instructors there. So when you look at a dive flow, for an IED Cat A, it's so much more different than an AFF Cat A. So we're looking at implementing those for some of the instructors. Definitely reinforcing the canopy portion of the A card. That's what we're looking into doing. When it comes to new stuff for IED, static line, actually all the ratings, we're looking at revamping the IRM. The IRM with the IED static line program was very antiquated. Some of the stuff was there from back in the 60s and 70s. So we're applying new training concepts for them. We're actually rewriting C4, which is the training methodologies or basic teaching models for the coach. Again, some of that stuff is antiquated when it comes to how we teach people. Not all of us are left brain, right brain, Nick. That's kind of old stuff. So we were looking at actually revamping that to today's training principles and some of the things that you see with modern day educators, instead of applying something that was antiquated that we did back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. So you're going to see some new stuff there. Okay.
And what do you see as being the way that gets rolled out to people who already have their rating? I mean, I think it's one thing to say it's available. It's another. I'm not saying maybe any
Good
type
question.
of, yeah. How's that going to apply?
My first thought would be the instructor rating renewal seminar.
Okay.
That's online. So that also is going to, like all these questions you're asking of me, new BSRs, training methods, what's happening with USPA. That's all going to be each year on the instructor rating seminar. It's going to be optional. We actually have some board members who want to make it mandatory because now you can go and get the new stuff, right? Get the new information. So that's the best way for us to put it out, real time. Also, you have the professional that you get in your email. I'm sure you still get it, and also we put it out in Parachutist. But also, it's also going to be top down. We need to educate the examiners, right?
Right.
Once we educate them, then the trickle down effect happens, and sooner or later that new training comes out.
That's really exciting because just for at a small 182 drop zone, I will admit we have struggled with this rating renewal seminar, and it's like you hear water cool talk like, well, you just have to talk about a little bit anything related to instructors, and that counts. And I feel like there's just such a wide range of what's available.
Very general. The definition.
On top of that, I pretty much stay here in the middle of Missouri, so I don't I don't travel around and get all these and see what's happening. So having a consolidated place to so trying to come up with material for a rating renewal seminar that I don't travel and get that information has been a challenge. So having one spot where I can get the videos and maybe we get together, we all watch the videos together or go through it together. That will make the rating renewal seminar piece a lot easier and a lot more informational.
Yeah, and that might generate some questions from you guys too, and I believe that's also going to have a feedback link for what you thought of that, and obviously what you would like to see on the next rating seminar. So that helps us as your association cater to the instructor corps.
Okay, yeah. What about any specific changes for BSRs?
There's been a couple new ones. You may have some of them have already been in for the last year or two. The mandatory AAD reporting, which I'm sure you're familiar with. We have within the last year and a half, we had a new mandatory gear check BSR. It's actually in the BSRs now. And then I feel a little remiss that we actually have to remind instructors to do that. But the reason why we do that, because there was a problem in the field when it comes to gear checks and the complacency thereof.
Was that a sport jumper or student problem, or
student and tandem? So we felt the need that we need to make that a BSR, because if you don't have it in the BSR, the item is not sanctionable. Remember the 1-6 process? We can't reach out and make the instructor comply if it isn't a BSR or in the IRM. There is not any written documentation that says you have to do it. Well, then it's kind of hard for us to reach out to the instructor, retrain, and possibly sanction them if they don't do it. So that's the new BSR, and it has to be done prior to boarding the aircraft. It doesn't say 3 or 4 like it's required in the IRM, but it's mandated that you have to do a complete gear check on your student prior to getting on the aircraft. I like to say for themselves, but hopefully it's implied. We also made we adjusted the BSR 2-1A1, where it states if you are a USPA instructor and a foreign rating holder abroad, that the BSRs may not apply to you if it's allowed in that country.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah. For instance, underage skydivers, if you're in France, Belgium, where you can skydive at the age of 15, 16 years old, but obviously our age of consent, you'd be violating the BSR, wouldn't you? So if it's allowed overseas, good to go. So we've amended that BSR. So if you're multi-rated, if you're a USPA instructor, and say, for instance, a Czech or a German instructor, if it's allowed in your association and in your country, and it may violate our BSR, you're good to go.
Right. Okay.
It makes sense because, unfortunately, they can't follow our BSRs in countries where they allow you to go through clouds, even though that's a FAA thing, but it's still a BSR thing.
What about if they're doing those jumps in the U.S.? Are they still beholden to those BSRs?
If they're in our country and they're multi-rated, they have to follow our BSRs because it's in our country.
So you're talking about if they're in another country that allows
Correct.
it. Yeah. Okay.
And they're multi-rated. I have a German AFF rating and my USPA AFF rating. If things are allowed, like jumping 16-year-olds in Europe, but it's not allowed in the USPA, right? Because it's a BSR, there's not going to be a sanctionable item.
That makes sense. And kind of going back to the gear check stuff, I know it's like things get going, everybody's got the same thing, things get busy, you run to the airplane, it's back in, and even we've tried to come up with kind of I'm gonna try a new thing this year where we're doing some type of a gamification to gear check. So what I did was I'm trying this. It's a new idea for us. We're buying one of those pull, take a number type of dispensers. And so anytime you give someone a gear check, you pull and you take a number. And then at the end of the day or end of the weekend, we're going to have a drawing for whatever, it's like, whether it's a hop and pop. And I feel like, even me, like when I'm on the ground, someone says, asking me, can I get a gear check? I'm just like, yes, because I'm not going to say no. But now it's like, okay, maybe there'll be some people that, oh, hey, I'll do a gear check for possibly for hop and pop or a drawing or some type of way to turn it into not just a routine check, but a gamification type of a.
I like it. That's why you can actually motivate start a safety culture where it's something that you guys always do. I like
Right.
that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
All right, let's this one has plagued me for the last next question has plagued me for probably the last 2 or 3 years. And
Yes, you've texted me
one,
many times on this
yeah,
one.
I know. I'm at the point where like now I'm kind of blaming it on you. I've gone to Michael for the well so many times on this. I'm done. So I want to cover the why is it important to renew ratings before they expire? What happens if they expire? And then kind of go over those time frames. I think
Okay.
that, the 2 year time frame in
Sure.
that type of thing.
Okay. The first and foremost thing, if you let your membership expire, everything expires, everything that's associated with your membership, licenses as well as ratings. So some people think, well, if I renew my membership, I'm good to go, which I'm sure you've encountered with some of your
Yeah.
jumpers, because they only look for one fee. There's two separate places on when you renew your membership. It gives you two separate links, two separate places you can put in your cart, your membership rating, as well as your membership as well as your rating. Now, once you let that lapse, you fall in the uncurrent category, which you will find in section 1 in each item for each rating, from 12 to 24 months. Once you are, that's just one day past your rating, you fall under the recurrency requirement, meaning you will have to meet the recurrency requirements for whatever that rating stipulates. It could be a check jump with a 20-minute call, ground prep. It could be 2 tandems. It could be any of those things depending on what the rating requires. Okay. Now, the problem is it says it has to be with an examiner or a designated evaluator, which we've come up with to try to help out the membership. That means that jump has to be done under the supervision of those two people. If those two people aren't there, you have to travel to a designated evaluator or an examiner to get current. Now, that can be costly on your part, meaning travel arrangements, the examiner's fee, and all that other stuff. So that can be problematic for you. In addition to that, you still have to, seeing that you're on current, Nick, you still have to meet all the other rating renewal requirements. That means you still have to do a first jump course. That's still required. You still have to do this, what we're doing right now, an instructor rating renewal seminar, right? Then on top of that, not only do you have to do the instructor rating renewal seminar, you have to take the test again. So once you fall into that, and that's automatic, it's on our website, it's on the database, it knows. Okay. Once you get past 2 years, the requirement is for a full course. Depends on the examiner and how much experience you have. It might be an audit, it might be a full course. Obviously, currency is currency. You're a better instructor, a better skydiver the more often you do it. We have created a little bit of a caveat to help those in unusual circumstances. We have a 15-day reprieve past your initial rating expiration. You have 15 days to ask your regional director to allow you to get your rating renewed without any additional rating renewal requirements, right? That means you don't have to go to DE or an examiner, but you will pay a late fee. Or basically it's up to the RD. He can either waive it or impose that fee. Now, I like it too. If you're late on your credit card bill, do they charge you interest? Well, this is the same thing. There should be consequences for you not maintaining your professional requirements of meeting your rating renewal. But the RD has that leeway. Once it's past that 15 days, you have to follow those rating renewal requirements, and it can be a challenge for you guys. It can be. Sometimes we can make it work. Now, let's talk about that DE. The DE still has to answer to the examiner who appointed him to DE. The DE doesn't have any authority. You and I've worked this, haven't we?
Yeah.
So videos are required, which you've already went through, right? Videos are required, tests, and I'm checking all that. So that can still be problematic on the DZO who might be a DE, right? Or you may not have that time. So it's very important if you want to maintain your rating renewal is work on it right away. You don't have to wait till 364 days to do that first jump course. As you meet those requirements, as you well know, Nick, on your USPA profile, we have that QR code. I can come up to you and say, hey, Nick, I just did my 15th coach jump. Can you go ahead and sign for it? You can hit that QR code and renew that portion for that requirement right off the bat. That can be done with coaches too. Say an AFF instructor has that same signature authority, doesn't he? I show up as a coach. Hey, I did my first jump course with you. Can you do my QR code? So we've made it so easy. It can be done immediately, right? On the rating renewal requirements. Not only that, but the USPA 90 days prior to your membership expiration and your rating expiration, they send you multitudes of emails, which I'm sure you've seen. Hey, 90 days, do it now.
Yeah.
60 days, do it now. 30 days, do it now. So right now, typically there's not much sympathy for an instructor who does not renew their rating.
What have you seen? Have you seen any other drop zones or drop zone owners have their own type of, like, I'm trying, sometimes I go back and forth. Like, it's beneficial for me as the DZO to remind the jumpers and stay them on top of them because I need them as instructors. But the other side of it is like, this is their job. They're professionals. Have you seen drop zones that really help their instructors and get on them and have a reminder system for them versus relying on the instructor themselves to do the renewal?
Yes, they have a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, some of the bigger ones. They'll let them know because on their database it'll show that because they take the cards, right? The USPA membership, plus they have excess on it. Every month, depending on the drop zone that I go to, they'll audit their instructor course, especially if it's a large turbine drop zone. Every month they'll audit whoever's on their team and say, hey, you're getting close to your expiration date. So yeah, I've seen that being done. But again, Nick, that's up to them. It's the instructors. If they want to maintain currency and work in this job as a profession, it's like anything else you need to do to stay current with your job.
Yeah, and I understand it's on them, but I have a benefit to them renewing as well.
Yes, you do, buddy.
Okay.
I get you.
So we talked a lot about some of the resources that are available to the DZ instructors. Is there anything to add to that? It sounds like we covered a lot of that.
There's a lot out there. We got Scott. If you go to the resources page, we have the malfunction videos, which I'm sure you may have already done, which is VR. Now we have the online A card. I don't know if you've played it or dabbled with that. Instead of actually using the paper card, which is always good for the student, now all instructors can go online with the student once they're a member. Use that whole QR code I talked about with the rating renewal, and that's under their membership profile. You can go online and they're just like we do as examiners, fill out your proficiency card. You can actually check the blocks on everything that's on their A card. How awesome is that? So when they're done, they don't necessarily have to submit that card with payment, right? Credit card payment. It's completed and they go right to payment for their A license instead of worrying about you got 60 days to turn in that card, right? Nick, as it says in section 3-2, it's all online now. Coaches can sign it, instructors can sign it. So all those options that where a coach can sign it, that's on the A card, it's actually on the online card. We're encouraging all of you to do that because it's so much easier to just sit there and point and click. It's hard for us to get an instructor to sign their signature. Yeah. But how easy it is so how easy is it for it to take the QR code and it pops up Cat A, B, C, D, wherever they're at. If you're a coach, it won't allow you to sign for the instructor rating portions, where it's method specific, but everything that your rating allows you to sign, if you're both multi-rated, you can sign all of it depending on the method. So that's something that we have going on. We have the safety and training modules for SNTAs. I encourage that for anybody. If anybody wants to do it, just ask your regional director. And we have the online school that Jen Sharp has revamped for their first jump course to some drop zones actually having their soon to be students before attending the first jump course. Watch that. So there's a lot going on.
When you're talking about the online A license card, does that become available to the student once they're a USPA member or when does that? Okay.
When they become a member. Once they become a member, they know that they're not a licensed skydiver, obviously, right?
Right.
So it automatically queues up and they have their member number is associated with their A card.
Okay. Next one. This is, I feel like this is specific to our drop zone, but I think I've seen this at a lot of other drop zones where it feels like running the radio for students is kind of a neglected skill. Like there's usually just one person at the drop zone who's really good at it. Nobody else knows how to do it. When that person's not there,
I'm talking to that person right now.
Yeah. So we've I can kind of tell you what we've started doing, and I've got a couple ideas, but I want to hear your thoughts. So what we've
Sure.
started doing is we've gotten to where we're gonna have one person running the radio. We anticipate I always want a second person out there
That's
with
awesome.
them who's either learning, and that's even just the oh, you meant left versus right. One last double check.
Mhm.
And then once they've been out, that second person, once they've been out there a while, they'll start running a little bit of radio also. And I think I don't have enough students to where every instructor and every coach can become proficient.
Sure.
So we're kind of picking, I want to have 3 people really that are proficient, and others, I would say my thought is the other people who need to know about it but not be proficient, they are that second set of eyes periodically.
Mhm.
So if something ever did happen, they could grab a radio and at least maybe get someone down
Mhm.
safely. But I've thought about even I've been thinking about this a couple of years, like even like a radio training course where someone comes, we put 4 students up with sport canopies, we talk to them and train them on how to do radio. So
Sure.
my question is, what's out there already for something like that? Is anybody doing that, or how do other drop zones train for a radio?
Very similar to what you've done. There's no formal program out there, and there's no formal rating for the radio. Actually, according to the SIMs and the BSRs, or even the IRM for that matter, you don't have to be rated to run the radio.
Hmm.
So a lot of people are afraid of that because they're afraid of putting the student in a dangerous situation or situation where the student may get hurt. It is, I don't want to, it's a skill that needs to be worked and honed, which you probably already know. And once you feel comfortable with it, it's not that big of a deal. What I like because during my AFF courses and my instructor courses, I offer the option of how to run the radio, and myself or my examiners will actually fly the pattern
Yeah.
for the instructor or the candidate. And I won't turn right into the power line. I'll turn left, and that'll be part of our debrief. The hard part is to get them to know what altitude the students are at. You know what I mean? Are they at 1,500 feet or 1,000 feet, etc.? So the first point, you need to have that instructor or the person who wants to be a radio or want them to work with radio is stand where you want the student to land, not on the side of the landing area, in the middle of the landing area, preferably where you want your student to land. That's the first step. The second step is the understanding the perception of where that student might be in relationship to when they're down one basin final, as well as their benchmarks. And, benchmarks: be over the road by, turn at the trees by, must turn no later than by, those kind of benchmarks, right? What I teach now in some of my instructor courses, if you do not know how high they are, tell the student to kick their feet at 1,000 feet. Oh, now I have an option. I know I get an idea what 1,000 feet looks like. Or give me a practice flare. Kick your feet at 500 feet or 600 feet. Then you can get that idea of actually how high they are when it comes to turning. Know where you want them to turn before you tell them to turn. Instead of waiting, anticipate where that student's going to be. You know what I mean, Nick, because you've been in
Yeah.
radio. You already know if they go a little bit more too far out, I'm not going to be able to get them in their downwind leg. So already know where you want them to be is the key to being a radio person, is because you need to set them up to be successful at their downwind basin final. It's always best to be a little high than obviously a little low, depending on the drop zone. So those are some of the things that I teach during my instructor courses on how to fly. How I should say, basically, it's a remote control student in a way. And the problem with that too is when you have them under radio, sometimes it's best for the student to learn a little bit through trial and error, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have a tendency to be mother hens. I'm just as guilty. And then you'll find out when the student gets down, I was just about to turn left when you told me to. I was just about to flare when you told me to. So the beginning Cat A's and B's, that was in my recommendation: stand out in that middle of the drop zone where you want that young student to land. If you are uncertain of the student's altitudes when you're first starting, just get into the habit of saying, kick your feet at 1,200 feet or 1,000 feet so you can get them prepped to start their downwind leg. Kick your feet at 600, somewhere around there where you can get them time to do their base leg. So those are some things that we teach, but unfortunately, there's no formal training program. As you well know, all canopies have different descent rates and wing loading and those kind of things. It's helpful if everybody's on the same canopy because of the glide ratio. That's helpful as well. But yeah, we all struggle with it, Nick. Hopefully that some of that advice helped you.
Yeah. Have you, I don't know if there's anything that exists like this, but is there anything out there that's like an altitude reporting broadcast? I know like a transponder or something for a student that would broadcast altitude. I'm just kind of brainstorming.
That is a great idea. Actually, when I was at the symposium, the seminar, Flight One has this thing it's attached on their harness, and it's also attached to the radio in their helmet. It tells them when to flare because it measures the distance from the ground. It's pretty phenomenal. Instead of me and you go and get ready and hold.
Yeah.
It actually, I think, I don't know when it's supposed to come out into the market, but that was pretty impressive that it gives that sound. So they see the ground, they perceive how high they're above the ground to initiate that flare. So yes, there's something out there. I don't know if it's ready for the market yet, but I think it's also been used in some military applications.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about the different ratings. Any procedure changes for coaches ID tandem that we haven't talked about?
Let me think. Procedural changes. No, other than putting on those online manuals out there in regards to that. Some things out there with the manufacturer in tandems. I don't want to cause a big hullabaloo on this, but manufacturers, specifically UPT, is trying to mandate to maintain currency. You need to also maintain currency with UPT as well as USPA. That's an initiative that I've seen out there. There's also an initiative trying to get rid of the medical, which you and I've talked about for years. I think that we might be getting some traction on some of that because quite frankly, there should be people out there who are talented enough to be a tandem instructor, but may have some medical issues that they've dealt with when they're younger. But because of that, because of the medication they were on 15 years ago, they're not going to be able to get a medical now because there's a whole berated process, a bureaucratic process the FAA has to go through, which I'm sure you and I've talked about that before.
Yeah.
So we're looking at maybe an option. UPT is actually looking at an option of having a physical certificate of health opposed to the medical certificate itself. There's some changing going on in the industry. Hopefully we'll see something come out of that.
Well, that would require an FAA change. I mean, that would require a CFR change.
No, because there's no requirement in 105.45 to say that you need a medical.
Okay.
It says you need to meet the requirements of the administrator or the manufacturer, and they say medical. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Now, if they change it, it doesn't say, it says meet the requirements of the administrator. So if the administrator says a certificate of health, basic med, a CDL, a doc, any of those things, if the administrator requires that, we're not violating a CFR. We're meeting the administrator's requirement. I hope that we move in that direction, but we need to get a lot more support. The manufacturers are in support of it. A lot of people on the board are in support of it, but we have some staunch supporters of the third class medical for obvious reasons, right? We give it to the Federal Aviation Agency. They already have a program in place. We don't have to reinvent the system. We don't have to make up the system. It's already there. So it's very easy for us to take advantage of that. Also, the perception of that you are a pilot in command as a tandem instructor. We see those perceptions as well as I do. And it's been working for such a long time. In addition to that, if you don't meet your medical requirement, it doesn't fall on the USPA. It falls on the member to meet the FAA requirement. So we're kind of out of the loop a bit because it's up to you to meet that standard.
What about some type of a waiver process?
You can't waive a FAR. So,
well, I mean, for the medical certificate.
Once the manufacturers get on to if they accept the medical certificate, we don't need a waiver. Remember, whatever the administrator requires to attend the course.
Okay, so it would not be a USPA waiver of medical requirement. It would be the manufacturers agreeing to waive
for the federal aspect for the FAR. Now, USPA has an additional layer. We say in the BSR, you need a medical. So you can attend let me give you another scenario. You can attend a tandem manufacturer's course and attend with a DOT physical, a certificate of health, Okay, you met their requirement, but now you still need to get a medical to get a USPA tandem instructor rating. See how
Yeah.
that works? There's a lot of quandary in between that on how we're going to navigate that. That can be a challenge. We're also looking, and this is me just hypothesizing and telling out suggestions that's been approached to me. Make the background check part of the tandem instructor's rating requirements, meaning he or she pays for the background check, because that's been the luxury of having a third class medical, right, Nick? They do a soft hit on Watson wards and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
DUIs, all those other things. And sometimes the member who may not have reported it, truthfully and honestly, might have a rating for a couple of years until they do that soft hit. Then he gets hit on that, and then he loses his medical. Then there's a whole big process called the HIMSS that they have to go through. So some of the suggestions were made: if you want to become a tandem instructor, a USPA tandem instructor, we will accept whatever the manufacturer's allowing, meaning a certificate of health or whatever they choose. But they also will pay for their own background check with a list of items that we as the USPA and the manufacturer are looking for. So that's a way that we can bridge that gap. We're still negotiating how we're going to do that. I also like the caveat: we've been having this program in beta testing for a while. Probably by the end of the next board meeting, we're going to have tandem instructors with 100 tandems to be able to use hand cam.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on, Nick. So when I'm talking, some of this stuff is.
Yeah. What about, I know there was a discussion at one point about a hand cam training course for TIs. Is that part of that 100 jumps? Okay.
We're not looking at it as a course. We're going to have a modules like the coach modules, talk about the history, how to fly the camera, the camera's secondary opposed to getting stable on exit, throwing your drogue, doing your hand, all those things that are required. But there's going to be an online tutorial, maybe something along with some additional training with the SNTA or a seasoned TI at the drop zone before just slapping on that camera and, go and do it. Now the things are so much smaller.
Yeah.
The fear isn't as bad as it was when it comes to cutting away and deploying your reserve. But we don't want them to get in the habit of camera first instead of flying your body first.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. That's been something we needed for a while.
Yeah. That'll definitely help me as far as small drop zone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're not doing that many times a year, so that'll definitely help. It kind of going on the instructor side. What are you seeing kind of across the board as far as staffing goes for kind of small drop zones, big drop zones? Are drop zones still struggling to find staff and tandem instructors? Do you see any that going down or continuing to be a problem? What's your kind of thoughts?
I've been in the sport for a very long time. Tandem instructors, seems like a 5-year life cycle. Really, there is. They get into it really hot and heavy. Then certain things, they get to the point where they forget about it. That's fun. They don't do anything to fill their soul other than huck drogues, those kind of things. A lot of times young skydivers look at it and they go, that's too much work watching those TIs. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Landing, running, picking up your new student, etc. So there's a natural evolution of a tandem instructor getting his rating, aggressively doing all those jumps, and then getting to the point where they're burnout or tired because they don't do anything else. So that has been historically still a problem. And I foresee this still being a problem depending on what that tandem instructor does. Meaning, do you do other things? Do you fly camera? Are you AFF? Everybody struggles, Nick, I'll tell you right now, with tandem instructors. Every spring I get everybody contacting me, because I also run tandem instructor certification courses. If you know of anybody, I wish I did, because, it's down across the board. Now, maybe with the new medical requirement, if we can change that might open up more opportunities for young instructors who wish to become a tandem instructor, but have been limited because of certain things in their past or physical limitations that the feds hone in on.
Yeah, I can see that. I feel like I've seen more on the other side where no medical issue, just no interest.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm seeing a larger percentage, it's just no interest.
it can be work. It can be perceived as a lot of work. You as a TI, it can be.
Yeah.
I still love doing tandems, but I love teaching instructors how to do tandems now. That's where I've evolved into. But yeah, you can see tandem instructors really working, and those young instructors going, I want to do that.
Yeah. I did have one specific question on IAD that I want to review with our instructors. The specific throwing of the pilot chute. It seems like I remember one time we were saying throw under the airplane, and then another time we were saying that throw at a 45. Can you kind of cover that?
Well, when we first started that, if the standing candidate did not throw it underneath the plane, that thing went around over the tail, the pilot chute. So then we tried to say that had 45 degrees because we felt that might reduce the likelihood of that happening. But then you didn't have a good enough throw, right?
Right.
Now we're saying down and away, meaning down. Think about throwing it underneath the horizontal stable instead of underneath the aircraft. Does that make sense?
So kind of straight back and down.
Straight, yeah, like usually when I taught you, down and away, down and away. Part of that problem is, when you're learning anything and we're trying to keep candidates from making mistakes that are commonly going to happen anyway. You know what I mean, Nick?
Yeah.
So the vernacular of how to throw the pilot chute, which should be down and underneath because of how you perceive that, or down and underneath the horizontal stabilizers, or down and away from the instructor. It's always been the same motion, but how we were trying to teach it was trying to keep them from throwing it too high. We wanted it down. Okay. Yeah. So that we were just trying to change that wording to help the candidates understand the principles of throwing the pilot chute. We're back to saying down and underneath the stabilizer.
So obviously it goes above the stabilizer. That's a huge issue. So the real goal is just any method to get the instructor to keep the pilot chute under the tail.
Yes, exactly. Throw it down and aggressive underneath the horizontal table or underneath, however the instructor knows he has to throw it down and under.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me, as long as we're talking about ID stack line, something new for the ID and stack line instructor, the rating renewal requirements have changed. Remember you had to do 10 ID pitches?
Yeah, simulated
with either students or stand-in students be licensed 100 jumps and above, and then you had to do 5 free fall. Now we flipped it. You only had to do 5 ID pitches simulated, right?
Yeah.
And then 10 solo free fall students. We feel that's a lot easier for that part-time instructor at an IAD drop zone who may not be able to do an A and a B because you've already did them, and all he has left is C's and higher. He's met the free fall. It's a lot easier to meet the free fall requirements than we found that was meeting the 10 IAD pitch requirements. Also, we had instructors out there who are also IAD and static line who wanted to maintain their currency, but they're at an AFF tandem drop zone and they wanted to maintain their currency. And they was like, I'm not going to pay for 10 jumpers to maintain currency. So now it's 5 pitches simulated or real, and then 10 free fall students.
And those free fall, can those be simulated also?
No, those have to be students.
Okay.
It could be C2 and higher, because you can get a coach involved in C2 and higher. C2 all the way up to category EG, or excuse me, H.
Okay. So what's new with Xcelskydiving? What you got going on? Yeah, I know you got courses scheduled all over.
Yeah. What's new is I'm bringing on a lot of new examiners who have the same passion and the same philosophy that I do. You may have seen some of them: Tom Wells, Matt Chang, Matt Matson, Brandon Radcliffe. We're looking to get a couple new ones. We've also, if you notice, we have a scholarship program. If you could promote that, that's actually my way of giving back to the sport I love so very much. And plus, we know there's poor people out there, poor young kids who want to be able to be an instructor, but financially it's not doable. So hopefully we'll positively impact them by having them attend our course, and so they can pass on, being the catalyst for change. Oh, excuse me, Nick. Let me put that up. Or be the change you want to see. We have a lot of new items on our website for purchase. You know, all those famous sayings, bring it, you know, talking's not teaching, all that stuff you hear me say, that's on there as well.
Yeah.
A new thing that I came up with this year and last year is, remember when you and I spoke, I envisioned having a book, a lot like going to college, where you have a college book in chapters, right?
Yeah.
Along with chapters, you have a test at the end of the quiz. I mean, at the end of the chapter, just like a formal education process. Also, I wanted to combine the Sims and the IRM, so you didn't have to show up with a book. You only had one book. So now we have that. Everything's in chapter format. It's like a real textbook with quizzes, everything that you need to know. You've got the Sims, the BSRs, all of the stuff that you're required to do. And at the end of each of the books, you have your outlines, you have your tests, you have your eval sheets. So now you just show up to the course, and we have everything that you need with one book for every rating. Notice how much thicker it is. It's almost like if it said SM. The goal for this, as you know, is when we got done teaching you how to be an instructor, you had a resource always to go back to. That's the same principle, but I coupled that with adding all the stuff that you usually have to show up with Sim and IRM.
Yeah.
That's in there now. So I think it's a better product than just giving you a book full of outlines and snapshots and those kind of things.
That reference the other two.
Yes.
And then you don't have to worry about the people who are like, oh, I don't have my IRM or my Sims 3 years, 5 years out of date.
There you go. There you go. I'm like, it's okay. But on that same note, it's still free. You can download that stuff free immediately on an iPad to attend a course. You can buy it immediately from Amazon. You'll buy the latest version. Ron's on it to the point where within 30 days, if we made any changes, the new changes are available on our downloads, as well as you can buy it on Amazon. So those are the new things with us. Every one of our books have the same concepts. So I'm excited about it. I'm also excited about the scholarship program. We had last year, we only did one for each rating. Now we're doing 2 scholarships for each rating, including the examiner rating.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And part of that premise too is maybe to get some young, passionate coach. We can cater them all the way through coach, ID, AFF, staff, line, tandem to examiner. That's part of one of our premise too, is get them young, train them right, and then they will hopefully they will aspire to be an examiner. And I like to end this with where every time I start my courses, I tell all my candidates this, Nick. I said, I am training my replacement, and that's how I look at it. Hopefully I can influence the young persons that are out there in that audience to take over my job and make a positive impact. So that's how we should look at this as instructors. Mentor that young licensed skydiver who wants to be you. You know, he will emulate those same qualities that he respects in you. And he will also want to apply the same things that he admires about you. So that's kind of the same philosophy that I'm looking at.
All right. Great. Yeah. I haven't I've seen postings about the scholarship program, but I'll definitely keep it in mind as we have kind of people coming up.
Good. Put it out there. Now there's one scholarship is they don't pay for anything. And then there's one for a half ride, so to speak.
Oh, okay.
All right. The only thing that we don't cover is obviously the instructor rating fee, but everything else. So I encourage, if you can get some of those kids out there, get them out there, put their scholarships in.
All right. Well, that's anything else you want to add? That goes through. I mean, that exhausts my questions.
No, that's about it. I think this is very productive. We can do this at any time if you like. If any of you jumpers are interested in have a question that was sparked by our conversation, they can reach out to me. You can share my email, or DM me or Facebook me. I'll be happy to answer any of those questions.
Well, I really appreciate this. This is going to be good for our instructors, and I'll share this out. I'll send you a copy, and we can share it however we need to. And I really appreciate your time.
It's good seeing you, Nick. Tell everybody I said hello.